When the gas, the oil, and the coal are gone, they must be replaced.
In the 1950s, nuclear power was hailed as the future of energy.
Atomic power is today's answer for tomorrow's problem.
Peter Dutton hopes it's the answer for next year's election.
Nuclear energy in Australia is an idea whose time has come.
He's promising the coalition could build the first advanced reactors in just over a decade.
We can have cheaper, cleaner and consistent energy if we adopt nuclear power.
No nuclear, no net zero.
So can you tell Australians how much these power plants will cost?
I won't be making the announcement here today with you.
The work hasn't been done, and if that work were to be done, the proposal would look more and more absurd.
2, 4, 6, 8. The cost of gigs is too great.
How would you describe a policy to build 7 nuclear plants in Australia?
Recklessly stupid and dangerously stupid.
What we know about nuclear is that it's capable of very large disappointments.
There are claims made that nuclear energy means cheaper electricity. I find that mind-boggling.
But there are plenty of supporters in the place where it all began.
I think nuclear energy is the solution to all of our issues with climate change.
My message to Australians, give nuclear a shot.
The coalition says you only have to go to North America to see what nuclear can do for us. So in this episode of Four Corners, we're crossing the US to examine whether this is the best way to tackle the climate crisis.
Well, it is a big day for the opposition leader today, really igniting the energy wars.
I mean, this is huge. This is going to be the biggest climate election we've ever had.
Today we announce 7 locations that we have looked at in great detail over a long period of time that can host new nuclear sites.
For decades, Australian politicians talked about nuclear energy.
We need to make sure that our economy can function 24/7, and we can only do that with a strong baseload power.
Now Peter Dutton has staked his future on it.
I'm very happy for the election to be a referendum on energy, on nuclear, on power prices, on lights going out, on who has a sustainable pathway for our country going forward.
As our coal plants retire, they should be replaced with zero emissions nuclear energy.
The coalition has identified 7 retiring coal stations that could be turned into nuclear power plants. 2 sites are earmarked for small modular reactors, or SMRs, to be producing electricity by 2035. All 7 plants would be government-owned. Since the policy launch in June, the coalition has been busy spreading the promise of cheaper power.
If we don't do this, power bills are only going to go up and up and up.
Renewables are in the firing line.
No other country in the world can keep the lights on 24/7 with the renewables-only policy.
While the coalition has named the sites, it's avoided giving many other details.
No costings, no modelling and no consultation.
There's no price tag yet, nor any modelling to support the claim power bills would be cheaper.
We want the information out there in bite-sized bits, if you like. We'll release the next stage in due course.
Even if the coalition wins the next election, it's not clear how it would lift federal and state bans on nuclear energy, when even some LNP colleagues are resisting.
No. I've got to be really clear. It is not part of our plan.
We are facing enormous challenges in getting clean, reliable, ample, affordable energy supply in the next few years. We can't wait for nuclear.
But an overriding message is that you just have to look overseas to see what nuclear energy could do here.
Most other comparable countries in the world have either embraced or are about to embrace zero-emissions nuclear technology.
So can you tell Australians how much these power plants will cost?
Yes, we'll be releasing our full economics well ahead of the next election.
You don't know now?
Well, so much as I think you are a terrific guy and I love the program, I won't be making the announcement here today with you.
Do you know what percentage of electricity these nuclear plants would produce?
All of that information, as I've said many times before, through other media outlets, will be released well ahead of the next election.
Anti-nuclear activists are happily filling the void.
We don't want your nuclear. We want renewable energy now, this decade.
It's hard to think of a policy launched from opposition that's as bold, as controversial, and as scant on detail as this. More than 3 months on, there is still little sense of how much these reactors would cost, how long it would take to build them, or how they would bring power bills down. What the coalition does say is just look overseas, particularly in the home of nuclear energy, the United States of America.
This is America's latest manifestation of the nuclear dream. The Vogtle plant in the southern state of Georgia now has 2 new reactors, a milestone for the US industry that's had hardly any new construction for decades. The plant's 4 units generate zero emissions electricity 24/7, powering more than 1 million homes and businesses. Peter Dutton says Vogtle's new Westinghouse reactors are the kind of advanced technology Australia needs.
We want to rely on the international experience. We don't want to be the purchaser of the first in class or have an Australian-made technology. We want to rely on the Westinghouse AP1000.
The US government had to chip in to get the giant reactors built. The Department of Energy giving $12 billion in loan guarantees.
Thank you for your service to our nation in providing this arsenal of clean power. So now, let's draw up some more battle plans for some more reactors. I don't know about you, but I, for one, am reporting for duty.
But some see this as a cautionary tale against building big plants. The AP1000 reactors opened 7 years late at more than double the budgeted cost. The final bill of around $35 billion makes them among the most expensive nuclear generators ever built.
If nuclear power were a person, it would be weeping with its head in its hands at the Vogtle story. 100% cost overrun, far, far more than the same amount of electricity, clean electricity, could have been procured for if Georgia had gone in a different direction back in 2007, 2008, when these decisions were being made. Vogtle is clear proof that large nuclear construction is not an economic way to go.
The heat is cranking up for your weekend, and tonight we are tracking a heat wave bringing the hottest temperatures of the year to Metro Atlanta.
The heat and the humidity together, it just knocks you out. I shouldn't have to keep my thermostat at 80 degrees and be uncomfortable in my own home so that the corporations can still make profit.
Consumers like Anna Hamer are paying the price of the cost overruns. In July, she was hit with her highest power bill ever, $618 for 1 month.
They were telling us everything was going to be okay with this plant, that it would be on time and it would be on budget. It's over budget, and we are paying for that. And that seems wrong to me.
Patty, my electric bills are going up. I haven't done the math on them yet, but I know they're going up. I think the
Pensioner Robert Searfoss is angry that ratepayers were also slugged with a construction tariff while the reactors were being built.
Nuclear power, meaning cheaper electricity for the customer, is absolute nonsense. It's not true.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that they bring back that consumer.
Patty Durand and Kimberly Scott are part of a coalition of community organisations campaigning on behalf of consumers hit by rising electricity bills.
People are suffering. They're having a hard time trying to pay their, not only their utilities, but their rent, their mortgage, other bills. Their quality of life is being impacted by these rate increases.
There have been over 10,000 posts online on social media like Reddit and Nextdoor and Facebook and other sites of people astonished when they open their bills, shocked, horrified, and upset. And the number of complaints to the Public Service Commission has increased tenfold.
The AP1000 nuclear power plant generates clean energy while providing the reliable electricity supply that today's world requires. This is the power of the Westinghouse AP1000 plant.
Nuclear construction costs at Vogtle and a failed project in South Carolina sent Westinghouse bankrupt in 2017. But under new owners, its AP1000 technology is being embraced in China and Eastern Europe.
I think there are power plants the world over where there have been lessons to be learnt, whether they're good lessons or lessons of things that can be done better. I think on the Vogtle plant, there are lessons there that we have learnt for our own policy.
Well, Vogtle hasn't brought prices down, it's put them up.
Well, again, this is where the big lessons are. That decision would ultimately...
Ted O'Brien, the Shadow Minister for Climate Change and Energy, has spent years investigating the nuclear industry.
Again, if you look at the Vogtle example, we should not be adopting first-of-a-kind technology. We should only be adopting what's referred to as next-of-a-kind, proven technology.
When you do the first of a kind, maybe not the bankruptcy, but you do understand when you build the first of a kind unit that you will have to establish the process. It will not be perfect the first time you do it. But on the positive side, once it's done, the road's been paved. You can reproduce that with less effort, with less uncertainty and less risk. And I think that's the benefit of where we are today. And one of the things that we're looking forward to, and we have visitors from Australia here, is that our technology and the things that we're innovating here will be leveraged to better society across the globe.
Stephen Biegalski is chair of nuclear engineering at the Georgia Institute of Technology. He says as each new AP1000 reactor is built, the price should come down.
It's the design that has all the supply chain worked out, and it has everything that we need. It's a proven entity that can be reproduced, and I hope it is reproduced moving forward. Within this last year, there's a lot of exciting things going on in the nuclear industry across the US and the world.
Press a lot of material.
One of the challenges for Australia would be training enough nuclear engineers.
I was originally focused on sulfur decomposition.
These students will soon graduate and join the US workforce. They hope the Vogtle expansion marks the start of an industry boom.
I do find it inspiring that I'm in the same state that they were built in. It's nice that two of them are built, so hopefully more to come. Hopefully it's the first domino that'll fall.
I think nuclear energy is the solution to all of our issues with climate change. We need a new form of energy development that's going to be more sustainable.
Nuclear energy provides nearly a fifth of US power and almost half its clean energy. But its reactors are aging and no other commercial plants are being built. Peter Bradford was a member of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which licenses commercial reactors.
It was the back end of the golden era in U.S. nuclear construction, and the NRC licensed some 20 plants while I was an NRC commissioner. I became skeptical of nuclear power as a result of its economic failures in the 1980s and 90s. There's always something available to do the job, at least as cleanly, usually more cleanly, and much more inexpensively.
The US is not the only nuclear country struggling to build new plants. France's latest reactor opened 12 years behind schedule and around 10 billion euros over budget. Britain's Hinkley Point plant is running 6 years late and facing a £20 billion overrun.
I started covering the industry in 1980. I have never seen a project come in on time or budget, and they've come in way, way over budget and way over time. It amazes me that there's so much hype about something that's been such an abject failure, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, it's produced electricity, but at what cost? And maybe I'm sounding way, way too negative, but I don't think that we should be wasting our money on it, plain and simple.
Can you name a single nuclear project that has come in under budget or on budget in recent years?
Well, the most recent finished build was that in the UAE, which was done on time and on budget.
Now, the UAE, not unlike Australia, did not have experience with nuclear energy, but they were able to introduce nuclear into a balanced mix.
A South Korean consortium built 4 reactors in the United Arab Emirates over 12 years.
We know that their experience is an inspiration to the world as we all try to go to decarbonise towards net zero.
But even under an authoritarian regime, each reactor was connected to the grid around 3 years later than expected. The coalition also cites the Canadian province of Ontario as a model, saying its 3 nuclear plants contribute to much lower power bills than Australia. The plants are owned and subsidised by the provincial government.
So if you look at Ontario today, it's probably around about 18 cents a kilowatt hour. In Australia, we're paying up to 56 cents.
But that's not entirely because of nuclear or renewables. There are different circumstances in each country. You're comparing apples and oranges.
No, not at all. Not at all. Because when you actually speak to the Canadians, one of the reasons they see power prices coming down is because of the role of nuclear in the mix. And again,
Ted O'Brien says a decision on the nuclear technology for Australia will only be made after a 2.5-year feasibility study.
We'll be having a community engagement process. Then after then, there'll be a matching of technologies with each site. And it'll be up to an independent nuclear energy coordinating authority to advise the government on what technology best suits what site.
What if it turns out the only technology that is available is hugely expensive and will put up power prices? Would you abandon the nuclear policy?
Well, that hasn't been the lessons learnt from overseas.
I love it, 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 I love it.
Hey, how familiar are you with nuclear energy?
If Australia were to follow North America down the nuclear path, it would need to secure public support.
Because that's just water vapor. It's steam.
Maybe I'll even get to hug a storage cask.
In the US, there's an increasingly visible movement of so-called nukefluencers. Nuclear influencers using creative tactics to push the cause.
Clean power forever within our grasp. By splitting atoms, it's come to pass.
I founded a nonprofit, Generation Atomic, in 2016 because nuclear power is one of our most important solutions for climate change, and most people don't see that truth, and we need to get that message out there for us to have our best chances to decarbonize in time.
Oh man, the cutest, least practical clothing in existence.
As young progressives who grew up after the Cold War, Eric Meyer and his pregnant wife Sarah don't fear nuclear.
Strawberries from Rosie.
They see it as a tool to make the planet safe for their child.
I want to be able to look my daughter in the eye and her children, if she decides to have any, and say that I did everything I could to address this.
And the particles move faster than the speed of light.
Social media is their main tool for changing attitudes, helped by supporters across the US.
We put the waste in these storage casks, which just chill on site of the plant. They're safe enough to hug, even kiss, even if you're pregnant.
So we got 23% clean, and of that, most of it's nuclear. One of the other gas plants.
I love the optimism of the atomic age. You know, it was a time when we were really dreaming of the future as a better place than it is today. And you just don't see that as much now. And now we're just trying to cling on and weather the apocalypse, essentially.
Eric Meyer took us out to see one of the 2 aging nuclear plants in his home state of Minnesota. Monticello opened in the 1970s, before soaring costs started to make building new nuclear power plants uneconomical.
It cost about $500 million to build. That would be quite a deal these days.
Why are they so expensive now?
Oh man, well, we've had changes in the regulation, that additional redundant safety systems upon safety systems, but a big part of it is that we forgot how to build them.
My message to Australians, give nuclear a shot. We need every tool that we can have, and it's one of our best clean energy sources.
It may take decades, but success will be rewarding beyond measure.
Nuclear energy began in an era when anything seemed possible.
Reactors could supply our major energy needs for centuries to come. We could both have our cake and eat it.
Here, the nuclear reaction is contained.
After atomic bombs were dropped on Japan, scientists searched for a peaceful use for this astonishing technology. In 1951, they proved it could create electricity by lighting 4 light bulbs.
Electricity flows from atomic energy.
You can still sense that optimism at the place where it all began, the Idaho National Laboratory. Nearly 6,000 people work here. Nuclear engineer Shannon Bragg-Sitton is an INL director working on clean energy systems.
This is one of the largest hot cells in the world. Behind this window, we work with materials that have been irradiated.
Today, this high-security facility run by the US Department of Energy is at the forefront of nuclear research.
We haven't built reactors for quite some time because the energy demands weren't there. But as we see demands begin to increase again, and really within the last 5 or 6 years, we've begun to see a major push toward net zero commitments globally. So we have to start taking a look at this differently.
So is nuclear making a comeback now?
Nuclear is absolutely making a comeback.
There's a new business model in nuclear, which is called harvesting subsidies. And if the government money wasn't there, I don't think you'd see as much activity as you see at the present moment.
So nuclear industry does not stand up on its own 2 feet?
No, it never has.
Nuclear's share of global power generation has been falling for years. Reversing that may depend on reactors being built faster and cheaper.
Investment in clean energy is paying off.
The holy grail for the US Department of Energy, and a key plank of Peter Dutton's policy, is the small modular reactor.
Small modular reactors, or SMRs, are simpler, smaller-scale manufactured versions of traditional reactors. The components can be built in U.S.-based factories and shipped to site locations by truck, rail, or barge, making them quicker to build and far less expensive than large plant construction.
But they're a long way from being widely available commercially. Only one project has won regulatory approval in the United States.
NuScale Power has developed a new modular light water reactor nuclear power plant to supply energy for electrical generation.
Last November, it was scrapped due to soaring costs, even after the Department of Energy pledged more than $500 million in grants.
It is a challenge to get through that, but we still have to say that first unit of anything will cost more. Somebody has to bear that cost. And it's a challenge that we do have to get over. That's where the federal investment, the loans come in. Yes, there was significant DOE support, but we need to get over that hurdle so that we can prove the cost can come down.
But I can sense the optimism and the determination, but there's no certainty in cheap SMRs coming online being mass-produced for the market, is there?
There's no certainty in tomorrow. So no, I can't give you 100% certainty that the economics will play out exactly like we hope they will. I can't give you certainty that energy storage can be built to the extent necessary to support a 100% renewable solution. There's not certainty in that. The best solution we have for a clean energy future is an energy mix that meets the demands appropriately for a region.
How are you going to have small modular reactors by 2035 on a mass-produced basis that would make them cheaper?
So by the time Australia would be making procurement decisions, there will be multiple SMR designs.
The latest attempt at an SMR in the United States is in this small coal town. We've come to Kemmerer in southwest Wyoming. Like many Australian communities built on fossil fuels, it's weathered boom and bust. Now it's the host of a billion-dollar gamble.
They are going through a journey from coal to nuclear, which I believe is very similar to what Australia should be considering.
Ted O'Brien visited Wyoming last year on what he called a due diligence tour to look at the viability of nuclear for Australia.
The Wyoming story is a fascinating one because here you have a state in the US which has been traditionally very proudly coal. I think that is a wonderful example of how you can practically go from coal to nuclear and leverage the existing workforce.
The man behind this SMR project is Microsoft founder Bill Gates. He's putting $1 billion of his own money in to try to build the first commercial SMR.
This is a big step towards safe, abundant, zero-carbon energy.
The small modular reactor would replace the town's coal-fired power plant, which is scheduled to close next decade, and use its transmission lines. Bill Gates' point man is clean energy lobbyist Jeff Navin.
If you've lived next to a coal plant, you're going to love living next to a nuclear power plant. It's clean, it's quiet, there's no soot, there's no particulate matter, there's no big ash pile. It's a really good neighbor, provides great jobs for many, many decades, and it's a good part of your community.
Bill Gates has worked hard to build community support, even crashing a local poker game.
You play a lot of poker, Bill?
I did in college.
Okay.
And not since then.
I'm getting a raise. I want Bill's money.
And he called his bluff, and he was right.
And Mr. Gates had a small pocket pair, which is almost nothing, and he called me and won.
I still sit back and go, was that for real?
Okay, so that's 5,000. We got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Another 50.
Don't show weakness.
Don't let her bluff you.
You know, she hasn't lost yet.
Joyce Chadwick, born and raised in Kemmerer, thinks the nuclear plant is just what the town needs.
Oh, man.
He can be my neighbor, I don't care. I'm glad it's coming here. I really am.
One every hand tonight. I've got a lot of confidence in the plant coming here.
What do you think it's going to do for the town?
Oh, it's definitely jobs, you know, and not just jobs, it's bringing careers. It's this plant's going to be around 60 years, 80 years, you know, who knows how long. So it's careers for our children and our grandchildren.
Yeah, I may be the only negative person at the table, I'm guessing. I'm not 100% sure. I like my sleepy little Kemmerer town. I'm not sure how safe it's really going to be.
Steve Pettinell is a fourth-generation rancher. His two sons aim to stay on as the fifth. Raising cattle is as much a part of Wyoming life as mining coal.
We get along great with the coal mine. They give you access to their pipeline for water all summer, and it's a very good relationship.
And that's the way he'd like things to stay.
You know, I realize people need jobs in the town to grow, but I like my way of life, and that may even be selfish on my part, but that's just how I feel. Just with the history of nuclear power, there's always that smidgen of a chance that something could go wrong. So I'm just leery that way. I do not want nuclear in my backyard.
Bill Gates is yet to convince the ranchers. The immediate priority is to win over the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. As yet, the experimental reactor doesn't have approval, so they can only build the bits around it.
We expect to get our license from the NRC in another 1.5 to 2 years, and I suspect when that happens, we'll start to see a significant number of orders coming up so people can get in line and get into the queue.
In this industry, vendor claims about cheaper nuclear costs have a long, well-documented and very sad history. They just don't come true. There is no basis for believing that this utterly unproven technology is going to sweep in and make a success of a field that up to now has been an unmitigated economic failure.
The SMR would only produce 1/3 of the electricity of a big nuclear plant. The idea is it would partner much better with renewables.
The problem with conventional nuclear reactors is they can't really vary how much power they're producing. It's not efficient, it's not economical. So they tend to run at full bore whether the grid needs the electricity or not. But this small modular reactor, if it works, would be different. Because instead of heating water, it would heat molten sodium that can store power, that could be used to top up the grid if it's running short.
Well, in a place like Wyoming, they have a tremendous wind resource. When the wind doesn't blow, we can ramp up to meet that demand. When the wind is blowing, we can scale back down and store that energy.
So where does all this leave Australia? Like the Kemmerer plant, Australia's 18 coal power plants are expected to close next decade. It will not just leave a huge shortfall in the grid. By 2050, electricity consumption is expected to more than double. It's only in opposition that the coalition has embraced nuclear as a solution.
The problem with it is that it doesn't make sense economically, and there was nobody in any sort of senior responsible position during my time as Prime Minister who took nuclear power seriously from an economic point of view. There are plenty of people there in the Coalition party room that know this is nonsense. You see, Dutton is only interested in winning a political point. And what he's seeking to do is to disrupt the transition to renewable energy.
Hello, thank you very much. Mr. Dutton will do an initial presentation.
I want our children to inherit a prosperous economy underpinned by cheaper and consistent energy.
When Peter Dutton addressed a business lunch last month, he was still on message.
And zero-emission nuclear power is our only chance to reach net zero by 2050.
And short on detail.
We'll have more information about the cost of nuclear. We'll have it in good time.
But he insisted renewables are part of the plan.
The coalition, like other countries, sees renewables and nuclear as companions, not as competitors.
They just need help.
No country can run effectively on part-time power, on solar, wind and batteries alone. Baseload power is critical.
Baseload power is the continuous supply of energy you get from nuclear or coal plants. The Coalition argues it's essential to back up weather-dependent renewables.
The best battery technology, which we all want to be better than what it is today, only provides a few hours of backup. So renewables must be firmed up.
To firm renewables, which are intermittent because they operate when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing, you need something that you can turn on and off at the flick of a switch. And that ain't a nuclear power station.
Many energy experts say batteries combined with hydro and gas backup can do the job.
The term baseload power is outmoded now. You don't need 1,000 megawatt plants running all the time to give it to you. You can combine so-called intermittent sources, wind, solar, first of all with each other because they're not all available at exactly the same time, but secondly with batteries so that you get the storage ability to store it when you have an excess and use it when you need it.
It is possible for people who care equally about climate change to land on opposite sides of this debate.
Hey, mate. Hey, good to see you. Good to see you.
Clean energy analyst Simon Holmes-A-Court and environmental engineer David Collins are self-confessed energy nerds. Last year they did a nuclear road trip together around the US.
This was the day we were both in Vogtle.
That's my photography.
You were a good photographer. 2 weeks in the car together, driving around North America. We covered a lot of ground and found a lot of common ground.
It's true. So true.
But they came back with starkly different conclusions.
Meanwhile, demand is going up because nuclear cannot supply the energy that we need in the time frame we need it, right? That's an absolutely critical point, that time frame.
Both are influential players in the politics around energy.
A gigawatt of gas costs you...
Simon Holmes-A-Court backed Teal independents to win coalition seats at the last election.
Nuclear energy has a place, but that place is not Australia. The resources that we have in wind and solar are the best in the world. To turn our back on that and pursue a technology where we do not have any advantage is crazy.
David Collins is often cited by Peter Dutton as an energy expert. He says what he learned in North America was a revelation.
I learned that nuclear is the only technology that will deliver zero carbon energy for not just Australia, but for the world. If Australia fails to adopt nuclear energy, then we will not achieve zero carbon. We can talk about renewables in a moment, but renewables, batteries, just the batteries alone would cost you trillions, multiple trillions.
No, I don't. I mean, show me your numbers, because I don't think there's any science behind those numbers.
I'm happy to do that, but I'm just...
David Collins believes AEMO, the energy market operator, has dramatically underestimated the cost of a renewable transition.
So they've totally neglected those costs. My spreadsheet said it was going to cost around $1.3 trillion. Absolutely. But that's not including the batteries that you would need for storage.
That estimate has become the coalition mantra.
Engineer Dr. David Hayden Collins says that when the replacement of panels and turbines are factored in, the cost is likely to be $1.3 trillion, 5 times greater than AEMO's estimate.
It's not just AEMO's figures that have been attacked. The coalition has also slammed the CSIRO's GenCost report that found nuclear power could cost twice as much as renewables.
And GenCost, they were looking purely at the generation. It's foolish. Generation is only a tiny part of a renewables solution to the problem. You have to consider energy storage. You have to consider energy transmission.
The CSIRO rejects his analysis.
The GenCost report is really accurate. We picked the best figures, the most relevant figures to Australia, whether that's for renewables, whether it's for nuclear, whether it's for gas, whether it's for coal, and we present the data in an objective, considered way.
So you stand by this report?
Absolutely, 100% stand by the report and the team behind the report.
The CSIRO's GenCost report also questioned whether a single nuclear reactor could be built before the last coal-fired plant was gone.
It looks like it will take at least 15 years to produce those reactors, and really going to be hard to have them online before 2040.
By which time, of course, AEMO says our ageing fleet of coal-fired power stations will have to close.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for nuclear to make a major contribution to our path to net zero before 2040.
How are we going to fast-track nuclear reactors?
There is no shortage of political opponents who will always point to an example of a project not going well, or they want to basically say Australia does not have the capability. I'll let them run that argument. When Australians have put their mind to things, they've gotten it done.
I think of all of humanity's achievements in the last 100 years or so, nuclear energy is one of the standouts. I think one day the nuclear sector might have a product that fits the Australian market. What's really clear is that the nuclear sector does not have a product at the moment that fits into what Australia needs right now.
To be quite honest, I think from the Liberal Party's point of view, nuclear power is something to talk about but never to build.
Malcolm Turnbull had no interest in nuclear power, saw no point in it. Scott Morrison was briefed about small modular reactors but decided it was electorally too risky. Why is Peter Dutton embracing this policy now from opposition when it is electorally a problematic policy? It's a challenging policy to sell.
Well, there's no doubt that the reason we are looking at a balanced energy mix, including zero emissions nuclear energy, is it's in the national interest. The only way you can do it is to learn the lessons from overseas and to apply it in the Australian context. And those lessons tell us that unless you have nuclear in the mix, well, prices will keep going higher, you risk the lights going out, and you won't reach net zero.
The coalition insists it's time for a full nuclear debate. But until it releases costings, it's asking Australia to take it on trust.
If nuclear advocates can show me that adding nuclear to Australia's grid would help us decarbonise faster and cheaper, then I'll be in the trenches with them. If they want Australians to embrace nuclear, they've got to do the work. But that work hasn't been done.